It is October 16th, 1793. The sky above Paris is gray, metallic, and still. The crowd in the Place de la Révolution murmurs with a strange, animalistic anticipation. They are not angry nor jubilant, only expectant, as if witnessing a sacrifice demanded by something older and darker than law or revolution. In a wooden cart jolting slowly toward the guillotine, Marie Antoinette sits upright. Her once golden hair has been crudely chopped short. Her face is pale not from fear, but hunger. She has not eaten properly in days. Her thin frame is draped in a plain white chemise, the last garment she will ever wear. She is no longer the Madame Deficit, nor the Queen of France. She is prisoner number 280. What the crowd does not know, what history forgets to mention, is that the fall of the blade was only the beginning. It was not just her death that scandalized the world. It was what happened to her head afterward. The executioner, Charles-Henri Sanson, lifts her severed head by the hair and presents it to the crowd. A grotesque cheer rises, some with glee, others with a raw, almost desperate catharsis. A woman is dead, but a symbol is shattered. The monarchy has been severed from the body politic. But somewhere in the roar, one man watches in silence. His name is Henri de Boniface, mid-level official, minor clerk for the Revolutionary Tribunal, invisible to most. But his eyes are fixed on the Queen's head with an intensity that borders on obsession. Henri has spent months reading her interrogation transcripts, studying the letters smuggled from her prison cell in the conciergerie. He does not see a villainess. He sees something more complicated. A woman shaped by impossible expectations, crushed between palatial excess and the guillotine's blade. But he also sees an opportunity. The head is quickly taken away, supposedly to be buried with the rest of her body in the Madeleine Cemetery, a mass grave filled with the remains of others guillotined during the Reign of Terror. No ceremony, no markings, a queen cast into anonymity. But the records of that day reveal something odd. One document, written hastily by a burial officer, includes a crossed-out line, "Remains sent to catacombs." Why would this be noted and then struck through? Another line in a different hand reads only, "Unmarked crate handled by Boniface." Henri disappears from Paris records within 2 weeks of her execution. No trace, no pension, no death notice. Nothing. 30 years later, during the Bourbon Restoration, King Louis XVIII orders the exhumation of Marie Antoinette's remains from the Madeleine Cemetery to be reinterred in the royal necropolis at Saint-Denis. Workers dig for hours, uncovering bones, remnants of cloth, and a skull assumed to be hers, but the records admit uncertainty. The bones are too fragmented. The skull does not fit the cut of the cervical vertebrae. Something is missing, and then something deeply strange happens. A letter arrives at the palace, anonymous, sealed with dark wax. Inside, a single sentence written in almost ecclesiastical Latin. Caput reginae nondum requiescit. The Queen's head does not yet rest. The message is dismissed as a monarchist prank, but whispers begin to circulate among palace staff. Servants report hearing sobbing in the crypt. One embalmer claims to see a woman's figure in white standing near the tomb, her face hidden by shadows. The Bishop of Saint-Denis requests the cathedral be spiritually cleansed. Louis XVIII, rattled but determined, orders an investigation. And one name surfaces again, Henri de Boniface. His personnel file is found in the Revolutionary Archives, but with a gap. A missing year, 1793, the very year of the execution. In a hidden drawer of the archive room, an assistant finds a weathered, worm-eaten notebook. The handwriting is erratic. Inside are sketches of a human head in various stages of preservation, anatomical notes, obsessive entries about memory, identity, sanctity. One passage stands out. If the body is erased but the head remains, does the soul still wander, or does memory rot like flesh? I do not preserve her out of loyalty. I do it to prove a point, that history lies. No one knows who wrote it, but on the final page, a cryptic diagram appears. The catacombs beneath Paris, a single chamber is circled in red. The Queen's head may have never left the city at all. The catacombs beneath Paris were never built for the dead. Originally Roman quarries, they were carved from limestone, deep and winding, before the city was even called Paris. By the late 18th century, the catacombs had become a necropolis, an underground ossuary designed to handle the unmanageable tide of corpses from the overflowing cemeteries above. Over 6 million skeletons line those narrow tunnels now. Some are stacked neatly, others spill like waves of forgotten humanity into corners where no names exist. But according to the notebook recovered in the archive, one head among those millions had a name, a crown, a legacy. In 1824, a young physician named Dr. Lucien Morval, newly graduated from the École de Médecine, becomes fixated on the mystery of Marie Antoinette's missing skull. He had seen the letter sent to Louis XVIII. He had examined the records of the Madeleine Cemetery, noting with precision what was not mentioned. It is the silence in the history that disturbs him most, the deliberate omissions. Morval is not a monarchist, nor is he a revolutionary. He is something far more dangerous, a man obsessed with truth, and he is not alone. Paris in the 1820s is a city stitched together by ghosts. The Napoleonic Wars are over, but the city trembles with unresolved tension between past and present, empire and monarchy, myth and memory. Morval believes Marie Antoinette's head may still exist, preserved somewhere beneath the feet of the living. His search begins in secret. He befriends municipal workers, pays off archivists, and even bribes former gravediggers who worked during the Terror. Most laugh him off. One tells him the catacombs are haunted, not by spirits, but by secrets that rot the soul. There are places, the man warns, where even the bones forget they were human. Eventually, Morval's trail leads to the Val de Grace, a former royal abbey turned military hospital. Hidden deep within its restricted archives, he finds an inventory list from 1793, medical specimens requisitioned for anatomical study. Among the entries, female cranium, believed aristocratic, recovered post-execution, held for cranial measurement. No further notes, no name, but the date is exact, October 17th, 1793, the day after Marie Antoinette's death. He cross-references the entry with a physician working at the time. Dr. Jourdan Leroux, known for his pioneering but ethically dubious studies on phrenology. Leroux believed the shape of the skull revealed moral character. He had begged the Revolutionary Tribunal for permission to study the heads of the condemned, believing he could prove treason had a biological basis. Most requests were denied, except one, Marie Antoinette. Leroux's journals, long thought lost, are discovered in a private collection in Bordeaux. Morval reads them with growing unease. Leroux writes of her cranial ridge, unusually pronounced for a woman, and notes signs of contradiction between nobility and defiance. She died a queen, not a traitor. But what chills Morval most is the final entry. Preserved by wax infusion, transported in sealed vessel to the Chamber of Shadows. What is the Chamber of Shadows? Is it metaphor, a euphemism for the ossuary, or something literal? Then a breakthrough. A map scrawled on the back of a page in Leroux's journal shows a branching path deep in the catacombs, far from the touristed sections, labeled only as Sepulchre Reine, the Queen's Sepulchre. On a cold November night, Morval descends with 2 laborers and a lantern. He follows the map obsessively, ignoring protests that they are lost. After 6 hours underground, breathing the fetid air of the city's ancient underbelly, they reach a narrow passageway sealed with a rusted gate. Above it, etched into the stone, are the words, "Il n'y a pas de fin, seulement la répétition." There is no end, only repetition. Inside, the chamber is small, barely more than a crypt. The walls are lined with bones, but the center is dominated by a stone pedestal. Upon it rests a glass vessel, opaque with age, sealed with thick wax. Morval approaches. He touches the glass. It is cold. The laborers beg him to leave it. One whispers that they have disturbed something meant to remain forgotten. But Morval breaks the seal. He lifts the lid. Inside, a perfectly preserved human head. Skin waxy, features eerily intact. Lips slightly parted, eyes closed. The unmistakable high forehead, The elegant jawline, the long Austrian nose. It is her, or appears to be. But then, something impossible. Her eyes flicker open. The chamber erupts in chaos. One laborer screams and runs. The lantern shatters. Darkness devours them. Morval is found 2 days later, wandering near the Seine, barefoot and muttering in Latin. He does not speak again for the rest of his life. When questioned, he scribbles one sentence on a scrap of paper before retreating into silence. She remembers everything. The head disappears again. By the mid-19th century, Paris was a city reborn under the hand of Baron Haussmann. Broad boulevards sliced through the old medieval heart. Sewer systems were modernized, and the catacombs, once ignored and feared, became sanitized curiosities. But beneath this illusion of order, the rot of old ghosts still whispered. And somewhere, among the dusty maps and missing archives, the head of Marie Antoinette had once again vanished. Only a single photograph remained, faded, sepia tone, found decades later in the drawer of a forgotten desk at the Musée du Poitrain, the anatomical museum of the Paris Faculty of Medicine. It shows a glass vessel on a pedestal. Inside it, a wax-preserved head. Elegant, regal, eyes closed as if in prayer. Someone had scrawled in the corner, Rex mortua, sed vigae. The queen is dead, but she thrives. In 1883, a young sculptor named Émile Delorme was given an unusual commission. A man, wealthy, anonymous, bearing credentials from the Ministry of Culture, requested a death mask of a woman's head. Delorme, trained in plaster and bronze, had done post-mortem molds before, but never of this delicacy. The head was delivered to him in a sealed wooden crate, escorted by guards. Inside, resting on crushed velvet, was the same wax-preserved face described by Dr. Morval half a century earlier. Delorme was told only this: the mask was to be exact, with no embellishments or interpretation. "You are to recreate what God took away," the official whispered. Delorme worked for 3 nights without sleep, entranced. He felt something uncanny in the expression, the closed lips, the serenity that did not match execution. He caught himself speaking to it in the silence of his studio, as if the head might respond. When he pressed wet plaster to her cold skin, he thought he heard, only for an instant, a whisper in German. By morning, the mold was complete. The crate and head were taken away, never to be seen again. But Delorme kept a copy of the mask, hidden in a locked drawer beneath his sketches. He told no one, but his art changed after that. Critics said his work turned morbid, haunted. His sculptures of women were said to all carry the same face, the same sorrowful beauty, the same impossible eyes. In 1901, Delorme died suddenly at the age of 47. Heart failure, the coroner claimed. But in his journal, written only hours before his death, he left a cryptic note: "The face watches me in sleep. Not a queen, but something older. A judgment. If she was betrayed in life, what does her gaze accuse now?" After his funeral, his apprentice, Jules Moreau, discovered the hidden mask. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. Delicate, yes, but with a weight to it. Not physical, but psychological. The kind of face that seems to know you. He placed it briefly on his workbench. Within days, he began having violent dreams. Floods of blood in marble courtyards, muffled screams beneath silken gowns, a golden palace collapsing into ash. He tried to destroy the mask, but every attempt failed. Plaster refused to break it. Fire would not burn it. He locked it in a trunk and fled Paris. For over 70 years, the mask lay untouched until the German occupation during World War II. In 1942, a high-ranking SS officer named Dr. Victor Brenner, an art historian with an obsession for relics of lost power, discovered the trunk in an abandoned estate in the Loire Valley. He brought it back to Berlin, convinced it was of occult significance. Brenner, known among his peers for dabbling in esoteric rituals, began conducting strange experiments. He claimed the mask emitted warmth, that it responded to proximity. In his final unpublished manuscript titled The Memory of Sovereignty, he wrote, "I have held the face of monarchy, and it weeps not for her own death, but for what we have become. She was betrayed by the people, She is their reflection. If you listen carefully, the mask tells you what comes next. In April 1945, as Allied forces approached Berlin, Brenner vanished. His mansion was found ransacked, the vaults empty. No trace of the mask, no documentation, no corpse, just a single phrase carved into his office wall in French. La tête n'oublie jamais. The head never forgets. 70 years later, in 2015, a curator at a private collection in Geneva receives an anonymous package. Inside, an object wrapped in linen and wax. She unwraps it slowly. It is cold to the touch. The mask, accompanied by a note written in English, printed on aged parchment. This is not a likeness, it is a warning. The curator locks it in storage, terrified but unwilling to destroy it. But months later, a break-in occurs. Nothing is stolen except the mask. Security cameras are mysteriously disabled for 13 minutes. 13 minutes. The same time it took for Marie Antoinette to walk from her cell to the guillotine. And in the footage, just before the blackout, one blurry figure appears in the hallway. Female, dressed in white. In every corner of European history, there are shadowed spaces, gaps too deliberate to be accidental, where the truth has been scrubbed, redacted, reburied. This is where the story of Marie Antoinette's head now lives. Not in the sanctioned pages of textbooks, but whispered through generations, handed down in symbols, codes, and scars. In 2017, British historian Eliza Harrow, a specialist in revolutionary iconography, publishes a controversial paper titled The Hollow Crown, a Cult Regicide, and the Disappearance of Marie Antoinette's Head. The academic world scoffs. Conspiracy theories are for populists, not Oxbridge alumni, but Harrow's research is meticulous, and buried within it is something no one can explain away. A 1795 letter written by Jacques-Louis David, the revolutionary painter and one of the architects of the Terror. In it, David references an unnamed group, Les Trônes sans tête, the headless thrones. He writes, "They do not serve the king. They do not serve the people. They serve memory itself. They collect what history abandons." Most dismissed it as allegory. Harrow did not. She begins compiling evidence of what she believes to be an underground network. Secretive, transnational, and centuries old, dedicated to preserving decapitated symbols of power. Not just Marie Antoinette, but the head of Charles I of England, rumored to have been spirited away before final burial. Tsarist relics missing from the Romanov tomb, even whispers from Cambodia, where Pol Pot's enemies were never truly buried. Harrow's obsession isolates her. Her colleagues abandon her. Her funding is cut, but her research deepens. She follows clues into forgotten monastic libraries in southern Italy and sealed vaults in Vienna. In a declassified Vatican manuscript from 1810, she discovers a chilling phrase repeated in Latin, caput imperium est. The head is the empire. Then she finds them. A string of correspondences in ciphered French, buried in a Paris archive under the false label of agricultural data. Once decoded, the letters trace meetings held every 13 years, beginning in 1793, by a group that refers to itself only as l'Ordre du Trône sans tête, the Order of the Headless Throne. One meeting in particular stands out, dated 1906. The location, Rue de Chartres, in the shadow of the Luxembourg Gardens. The agenda? Transfer of relic from Delorme lineage to the new guardian. That name, Delorme, the sculptor, the one who made the mask. Harrow begins to suspect that the mask is no longer a mere artifact. It has become a relic of power, one that has passed from hand to hand, generation to generation, kept not just for preservation, but for control. She publishes none of this. She is followed on the metro. Her apartment is broken into, but nothing is taken. Instead, a wax seal is left on her kitchen table. Dark red, pressed into it, the unmistakable profile of a crowned head, severed at the neck. One night she receives a call from a blocked number. A male voice, British, old, deliberate. He says only, "You're looking too hard. She doesn't sleep. She listens." The line goes dead. 3 weeks later, Harrow disappears. No trace. Her last known sighting is security footage from Gare de Lyon, boarding a train to Geneva. Her suitcase was found in a canal, but her laptop, notebooks, and field journals were gone, wiped from her apartment. Her university denies she was ever tenured, but the story does not end there. In 2020, a low-level customs officer in Marseille inspects a shipment labeled antique theatrical props. Inside are a dozen crates of mold-cast heads, cheap papier-mâché, dusty and broken, all except one. One crate contains a velvet-wrapped object, sealed in wax. It is cold, too cold. The officer removes the wrappings, and there she is again, the queen. Not a mask, not a sculpture, the head. But the preservation is unnatural. The skin is uncorrupted, the eyes closed but not sunken, the expression more peaceful than death allows. And beneath the jawline, a symbol is now branded into the neck, a sigil, circular, crown above a blade. Inside it, a date, 2093. The officer collapses on the spot, seizing. He lives, but speaks only in fragments afterward. His first words are, "She said we are all waiting for the blade." The artifact is confiscated before independent experts can examine it. Within days, the customs facility burns to the ground in what authorities label an electrical accident. Surveillance footage for the entire block is erased. The officer is transferred to a psychiatric facility. 1 week later, he vanishes. But someone did take photographs, leaked online briefly before disappearing again. One image survives in a private folder passed anonymously to an investigative journalist. Zoomed and enhanced, the image of the head shows something never seen before. Along the upper eyelid, beneath waxed lashes, a faint line, as if the eyes are beginning to open. In the late winter of 2021, somewhere in a decaying wing of a shuttered museum in Vienna, a whisper moved through the archives. A whisper, not of sound, but of recognition. A code. An old curator, nearly blind, discovered a wax-sealed envelope inside the hollow of a long-forgotten bust. The envelope was dated 1793. The seal, identical to the one left in Eliza Harrow's apartment, bore the severed crown. Inside, a single sheet of parchment, yellowed and fragile, written in a precise, curling script. It read, "When the people forget, the head remembers. She has not forgiven, nor will she be buried again." The curator, already well-versed in the more disturbing undercurrents of Habsburg history, forwarded it anonymously to a group of fringe archivists and historians who operated online under the pseudonym The Crownless Watch. For years they had been ridiculed, dismissed as romantics with too much time, theorists grasping at shadows. But one among them, a woman known only as Muriel, had always believed that power leaves fingerprints not only on history, but on time itself. She had been tracking reports of the Queen's head since her graduate years in Strasbourg, through Delorme's mask, through Brenner's occult fascinations, through Harrow's sudden disappearance. But now it was no longer scattered fragments. It was aligning. Patterns were forming. Appearances were quickening. 3 separate reports from 3 different countries came within the same month. A fire in an antique shop in Prague. The owner, when pulled from the wreckage, clutched a charred bust resembling Marie Antoinette. Before he died, he repeated, "She will take her place." A Swiss collector hospitalized after locking himself in a vault with an unknown artifact. When rescued, he had scratched the word coronation into his arms over a dozen times. In New Orleans, a woman at a historical seance claimed to be the head without the body. When shown a photograph of the preserved head, she wept and collapsed. Upon regaining consciousness, she said, "You will crown her, or she will crown herself." The whispers turned into storm winds. In Paris, Muriel finally accessed the long-sealed police report from 1942, detailing the looting of Victor Brenner's estate. Among the confiscated documents, most since destroyed, was one disturbing record, a ritual diagram, a crown placed atop a severed head surrounded by 13 empty chairs. Resurrectio per memoriam, resurrection through memory. The meaning seemed insane, until Muriel stumbled across the private memoirs of an elderly Benedictine monk, written during the Nazi occupation. The monk described Brenner's obsession with empathic relics, items that, through shared trauma, could bond themselves to the collective unconscious. His theory was that the head of a queen, severed by her own people, might store not just blood or bone, but intention, a final emotional imprint so potent that it lingered beyond flesh, not merely a symbol, but a sentience. And if that imprint were somehow preserved and returned to a vessel of power, the night she read that, Muriel began to dream in languages she had never spoken. In the dark, velvet-cushioned halls of her sleep, she walked Versailles alone, every mirror cracked, every chandelier swaying above a floor of guillotines. And in the hall of mirrors, on the throne, sat the head, no body, only the head, wearing a crown of braided hair and ash. Its eyes were open now, watching. In April 2022, Muriel went silent. Her final online post, time-stamped 3:17 a.m., read simply, "She does not need her body to return. She needs only our fear." Since then, sightings have intensified. The Louvre reported a breach in their Royal Antiquities wing. Nothing was taken, but an 18th century coronation cloak was found laid out perfectly on the floor, as if waiting for someone to wear it. In London, a private collector found his chamber of wax monarchs decapitated overnight. The wax heads were never recovered, but in their place stood a single note: "Je reviens, I return." In May 2023, a viral video surfaced before being immediately scrubbed from major platforms. It showed a group of masked individuals in a crypt beneath Paris, forming a circle around what appears to be a head cradled in velvet. Their chant is rhythmic, ancient French, impossible to fully translate, but a single phrase repeats, "La reine est la clé," the queen is the key. For those watching closely, one final detail stood out. The waxed eyelids of the head had opened, fully, and in the dark of the tomb, just before the video ends, the lips move. Only one word is heard, gasped in a hoarse and forgotten tongue. "Assemble." Where the head now is, no one knows. But those in the watch, the archivists, the dreamers, and the obsessed, those who have followed the trail from execution to resurrection, agree on one thing. The queen does not seek revenge. She seeks restoration. And what will we give her when she asks for her crown? If history leaves behind ghosts, then perhaps Marie Antoinette is the one who never stopped watching. Was her severed head truly just a relic of revolution, or the beginning of something darker, deeper, and unfinished? Some say she was a victim, others a symbol. But what if she was always something else entirely? Subscribe if you want to follow the untold stories that lie beneath the surface of power, memory, and myth. The past is not done with us.